Today we're checking out the supercars of the 2000s. Let's see which were the best and which were the worst, at least in my opinion. I'll be ranking the cars on this tier list, and the S tier is the best, the D tier is the worst. Keep in mind that all these ratings are just my personal opinion, and I would love to chat about them in the comments below. And to make things more interesting, I will first rate the cars based on the looks alone, then we'll open up their Wikipedia page to see the quick specs of the car, and I'll adjust my answer if the car gets cooler or less cool. Let's get into it. The first car of the day is the American Saleen S7. Now, I don't know much about this American supercars because they were not really popular when I was growing up here in Europe, but it does have butterfly doors, it looks really cool, so my initial rating of this car is B. Now let's check it out on Wikipedia. So it was built between 2000 and 2009, it obviously has butterfly doors and a massive 7-liter V8 engine, which is just unbelievable. It was either naturally aspirated or twin turbocharged, and it made 558 horsepower or 760 horsepower. So it obviously made a ton of power, and it had one of the biggest V8 engines that I've ever seen. A 7-liter V8 engine, which is just insane to me. So just because of that, this car is getting a higher rating. So before I rated this car as a B, but knowing that the engine is a 7-liter V8 makes it an A for me, definitely rating it A. Wasn't expecting that. Next up is a Mercedes-Benz SLR McLaren. Now, it's a really cool car. Growing up in Europe, I heard about this car a ton. I love the long hood, the butterfly doors and those side exhausts, but the design of the car itself was never really that special to me. Because I'm mostly rating the design at this first stage here, I'll put it as a C. Now let's see what the Wikipedia says. So the SLR was produced between 2003 and 2009, and there was a bit more than 2,000 of them produced. The engine in this car was a 5.4-liter supercharged V8 that made 626 horsepower, and the special edition 722 made 650 horsepower. So yeah, another car that makes a ton of power. I didn't know that it was supercharged, which is really cool, but I don't think that my rating here will change. It remains a C. The next car is a Lamborghini Murcielago. Now I know that this car came after the Diablo and before the Aventador, and at the time it was the top of the class Lamborghini supercar. It's wide and aggressive, which is definitely a Lamborghini, but I never found it that special, so for now I'll leave it at the B. It was built between 2001 to 2010. They built 4,000 of these, so it's less exclusive than the SLR, and the engine is of course a V12, ranging from a 6.2-liter to 6.5-liter, and the most powerful one made 670 horsepower, which is a lot. Nothing new and nothing unexpected here, so my rating remains at a B. The next car is the Koenigsegg CCX. Once again, I don't know that much about this car because at the end of the day I would class it as a hypercar. There were only 29 of those produced, so they were really exclusive and not that much covered in the media, like for example a Lamborghini Gallardo or something like that, but it's definitely an insane machine. I would rate it a C just based on the design because it looks cool but not that special, but let's check out some information on it. As I said, there were only 29 of those produced between 2006 and 2010, so these are really rare and really expensive, and they're powered by a 4.7-liter Koenigsegg V8 engine that made 806 horsepower. It's a really cool car, and the updated version, the CCXR, made over 1000 horsepower, which is just insane. This car probably broke a lot of records, and it's surely an engineering masterpiece, but I personally just don't find it that cool, so I'll leave it at a C. Sorry. Next up is the car that I've never actually heard of, and it's called Gumpert Apollo. I hope that's the way you pronounce its name, but it is from Germany, so it could be Gumpert Apollo or something like that. And to be honest with you, just basing on the way it looks, I'd put it as a D. Now let's check on some data. The Gumpert Apollo was built between 2005 and 2012. It's powered by a 4.2-liter V8 engine from Audi, and I honestly don't find it that interesting. What I did find interesting, however, is that the turn indicator here on the side is basically from Audi, so I already knew that it's somehow related to Audi. It's definitely a supercar, and I'd be over the moon if I see one in real life, but I don't think it looks that cool. That air intake and the big antenna on the roof are not really flattering, so I'll leave it as a D. Next up is a Porsche Carrera GT. Now that's a legendary car for me because I love Porsches, and Carrera GT used to be top of the top of them, so I'll instantly put this one as an S tier, and let's see if Wikipedia will change my mind. The Carrera GT was produced from 2004 to 2006, and they only produced 1270 of them, so these things are really exclusive and really expensive. It's classed as a two-door Targa Roadster, which is not a surprise, and it's powered by a 5.7-liter naturally aspirated V10 engine that made 612 horsepower and sounded absolutely beautiful. Just listen to this. The The car is a legend and I don't think that anyone disagrees with me when I put it in a top tier. The next car for the day is a Ferrari Enzo. The Enzo has a much sharper design than all the other Ferraris from that era, and I think it looks pretty cool but nothing special, so I'll rate it as a B for now. So the Enzo was produced from 2002 to 2004 and they only produced 400 of them, so these are even more exclusive than the Carrera's GTs, and they're powered by a 6-liter V12 engine that made 660 horsepower. I didn't know that it's powered by a V12 engine, which is really cool, but it remains a B in my book. Next up is a car that shares a lot of parts with the Ferrari Enzo, but it's actually a Maserati MC12. Now this looks like a bigger car than the Enzo and it's definitely also a supercar, but I'm honestly not a fan of its design at all, so I'll rate it as a D for now. It was in production for only 1 year and they only produced 62 cars in total, so this is for now the most exclusive car on this list, which is definitely something that I didn't expect, but the reason could also be that they're ugly. It's powered by the same 6-liter V12 engine as the Enzo and it made 630 horsepower. It's definitely a supercar, but I don't think it's a cool one, so I'll rate it as a D. Next up is a Ford GT. I always thought that this car is very iconic. I love the way it looks, it's very wide and very low. I also always liked the rounded taillights because it made it easily recognizable. It's definitely a really cool car in my opinion, and I'll rate it as a B for now. So this one was also produced for only 2 years between 2004 and 2006, and they produced a bit more than 4,000 of them. Unlike the current one that uses a V6, the original was powered by a 5.4-liter V8 that made 550 horsepower. It's definitely a very cool supercar and it definitely deserves at least a rating of B. Next up are again two very similar cars, and the first one is an Audi R8. The R8 was always one of my favorite supercars when I was growing up because I got to see a couple of them in real life. So when I as a kid saw a car that was so low and so wide, it definitely made a huge impression for me, so this car is an instant A for me. The first generation of the R8 was built between 2006 and 2015 and they almost built 30,000 of them, so this one is really not that rare. And as you probably know, they were powered by a 4.2-liter V8 or a 5.2-liter V10, which in my opinion are both really cool. As I said, the next car is really similar and it's a Lamborghini Gallardo. Now I have a really tough time rating this one because I was born in the late 90s and this is one of the first Lamborghinis that I ever heard of, so that would make it one of my favorite supercars on the list by default. But knowing what I know now about it, I would have a really hard time rating it higher than a Murcielago, but I do think it's cooler than a Murcielago, so I'll put it as an A. The Gallardo was also massively produced from 2003 to 2013 and they built almost 15,000 of them. What I didn't know, however, is that the first generation was powered by a 5-liter even-firing V10 and the second generation was powered by a 5.2-liter odd-firing V10. That's something that I find really interesting, and it made between 500 and 570 horsepower. So I think that the rating of A fits it very well. And the last supercar of the 2000s is of course a Bugatti Veyron. If I didn't know anything about the Veyron and I just saw the picture of this car, I would probably rate it as a C. But out of pure respect to the engineering masterpiece that this car is, I'll instantly put it as an S. Now let's see why. The different variations of the Veyron were produced from 2005 to 2015 and they produced 450 of them. But the most important part of this car is of course the 8-liter quad-turbocharged W16 engine that made 1001 horsepower in the standard version and 1201 horsepower in a super sport. The car is obviously iconic and I don't think that I need to explain why it fits into the top tier. So here's the tier list of my favorite supercars from 2000s. I was expecting a list similar to this one when I started this video, but the car that definitely surprised me the most was the Saleen S7 because I had no idea that its V8 engine is so massive, and that's also the reason why its ranking is so high. And that's it for this video. Let me know what you think about this rating in the comments below. Also let me know if I missed any of the supercars. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more car videos like this one.